Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. In this episode, we will be learning from Claudia Fan Munce, an advisor for NEA. Claudia, could you take a few minutes to share your story and how you got to where you are today?
Thank you, Nicholas. Great to be here. There's so many different journeys that led to corporate venture. I joined IBM while I was in the summer getting my master in computer science, and then joined the company R&D to work on magnetic disk drive. Somewhere along that journey, I was rising through more of a business leadership, particularly in the commercialization and licensing, research technologies, and this $1.2 billion a year revenue in the licensing of R&D portfolio. And along came a brave new CEO, Lou Gerstner, into IBM. And this was obviously year 2000. And he said to me, since you're the executive that knows about our own internal R&D portfolio, the venture, remember, Nicholas, year 2000, venture hit $100 billion annual investment.
VCs, financial VC.
Financial VC. And corporate VC was almost non-existent. So Lou Gerstner said, there's got to be something there that should matter to us, because this massive level of startup trying to revamp everything that we ever see in the world. And why don't we start a mission to really go out there and be able to spot what is relevant? What are the startups that are developing things that will be relevant to us today or maybe somewhere down the road? So this is my journey into corporate venture. No clue what that really means. No clue how relevant that really will be to IBM. But the timing was very critical. And one of the things that I've done is understanding where is IBM's strategy in terms of looking at the future. At the same time, providing insight I can see from the venture community, what we call the headlights, and trying to fine-tune that strategy and to make sure that we are in sync with what this $100 billion a year investment community is doing. The funny part about that is we were not really focusing on investing. Remember, I'm a computer science engineer. Year 2000, we arrived on the scene, and people are looking at us and saying, if you're not investing, you don't get to have a seat on the table. I'm not going to show you where I'm investing or what my company. You have absolutely no vested interest and no shared risks with us. So I have to go back to the large mothership of mine and say, look, we don't get a seat on the table because we're really not putting any risks on our own shoulder. All we want to do is do the sniffing of what other people are investing, and that is not okay in this community. As a lot of CVC has to learn that trick, that you can't just consuming the management attention, the bandwidth for your own interests without really contributing value and share the risk in helping to grow these companies. And lucky for me, IBM was a very large balance sheet, very cash-rich company. So we actually became a fund of funds. We're in 87 venture funds around the world.
Invested in more funds than most CVC invest in
Well, you know why? Because I am not an investor. For me, the experience that I have, as I was telling you, is I know IBM. I know where IBM is going. Particularly, I know where IBM R&D is going because I have to manage that portfolio. But I have no idea how to build a company. I've been inside IBM Lab for the first 15 years of my career with IBM. So clearly, my model, or the IBM model, they did not put a professional investment team in place. What they did is put a professional teams that knew how to develop products and how IBM can take these products to the marketplace and then use that skill to try to bring innovative components from the venture community and be able to incorporate or integrate that into the mainstream product development cycle of IBM. And that's very different, right? Yep. With the exception that if you don't know how to do direct investment, then you have to trust people who know how to. So we invested in all these funds because these are professional financial investors. And along the way, as we started making some direct investment alongside, they actually taught us, but we were never the people who led the round. We were never people that sat on the board, not even as an observer. We always let the people who know how to build a company. Our only job is really understand where the strategic alignment is between that investment and our own parent company. And two, really do our due diligence on the credibility of the investors behind them. Even though we were direct investors, we were never doing the same type of due diligence as the financial investors did.
Very interesting. First, I like the idea, the analogy of sniffing around, which would be really the worst practice you could do as a corporate VC.
Yeah, and it's bad for all of us, right?
All of us, for the full ecosystem.
Exactly.
But what I like is your profile was perfect to identify the gaps inside the organization, but also IBM was a system integrator. So you're not necessarily interested by what could disrupt IBM as much as what could disrupt the customers.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how, when you set up the corporate VC, you started to add value to IBM's own customers?
For the first 15 years, innovation meant what is in the R&D lab, right? Meaning inventions, really. And what I learned as I went into the corporate venture, as I learned from my CEO, is innovation comes from a whole spectrum of players. It comes from university, come from your own customer, your supplier, your employee is a great source of innovation. But what I really learned was it is such a challenge to get this tiny little company with a little component of the technology into this just a gorilla of a company as IBM was, with incredible stack of products and solutions and business units. And you have to navigate and try every door to see if you're knocking on the right door, with the exception that if you can convince a customer that this is something that he or she needs for their business success. The IBM at that point was, when we started the venture, we had 440,000 employees around the world, 173 countries, and everything is matrix about fifth dimension. So you can go into a black hole, or you can have a paying customer saying, IBM, you're my integrator. You're running my data center. You're providing all the business application for my critical business processes. And I'm seeing this new thing that can help me accelerate, optimize, cost reduction, or have a bleeding edge of something that my competitors don't have. Once the customers say that, that is a shortcut to any conversation you need to have internally, even in the gigantic machine like IBM was.
That's a golden nugget.
Yes.
I'm going to ask a question I've never asked on this series, because the audience is really for people thinking about going into corporate venturing. But here you have such a perspective that I think we should talk to the CEO of a company who's thinking about starting a CVC.
Yes.
And in a way, coming from R&D, I feel like you had this unique advantage of understanding R&D. And even though you felt like betraying them, you actually could see how you could help them as well. So to the CEO of companies who are thinking about setting a corporate VC, what would be your recommendation to set it right? And how to pick that person, whether from the inside or from the outside?
I think they can both work. It's really much more about the person, the model he or she defined for the team, than the fact that they have or have not. My experience in my time when we started in 2000, because it was so new, it was so poorly understood, it was seen as, most of my colleagues would say to me, what did you do wrong? Why are they putting you to the sideline? You're doing so well at the corporate level. But I think that has changed. I think CEOs, by and large, understand why innovation is such a critical part of their job, to be able to identify the next generation of everything and the next iteration of whatever they're doing today. that kind of notion that the internal person, like I was, certainly was a lot more effective in navigating internally. Because I knew the head of every large business. I grew up with them, chances are. And IBM is a very technology-driven company. So most of the senior leadership all come from the R&D lab, and all have some advanced degree, engineering or science. So my role clearly was, at that point, a very complex and very, I will say, resistant audience inside a large corporation, even though I had a very strong CEO sponsorship. So he will have to come down and say to all the business line managers when they're asking for funding for development or M&A, he will have to say, yeah, but have you talked to Claudia?
That's a sign.
Does she say anything? Has she seen anything that we can get this done cheaper or faster? We don't want to be reinventing wheel. And most of the people inside large corporations are not aware, like you and I are, about all the deals that are being done in the venture ecosystem, large and small. So that kind of sponsorship for an internal person became very important. But I think if you have already an organization who is adopting this innovation model, then somebody who have this fresh look about what we're doing and how you can add value to it and how you can change the processes and model to accelerate the innovation cycle inside the large corporation is very important. So the one thing that I always tell the CEO, and I met with CEO of Fortune 50 about this subject all the time, is this person needs to be like a kid in the candy store. And that is literally what I that is literally what I said to all the CEO of Coca-Cola, the major bank. Because if you don't have that kind of conviction, that kind of excitement out here, you can just get lost. And then you have to take that and trying to align with a much older, much larger, much more complex entity. And that can be so frustrating if you don't have the fuel of the convictions that you have that this can truly add value and make the impact inside this very large machine that he or she represents. People fail to understand. They see us out there with the hottest company. They don't realize how much grinding it takes to just map out all the moves and making sure all the dots are connecting and the people are working on the right thing. And I think if you don't have someone who can earn that level of trust across the board, I never saw myself as a relationship person. You're an engineer. You don't pick engineering if you think you're good at relationship or something. But what I found is because I'm so excited about what they're doing.
You want to spread the word.
Yes, and that creates a relationship, right? People are really sharing the excitement that you have about whatever you're doing. They're much more likely to give you the trust level you need to create that relationship. So a successful corporate venture leader creates that level of trusted relationship, I will say, across the board. And it's not easy. It's internal, it's external, it's with your employees. In my cases, I work with so many large IBM clients because back then the model was so new. A lot of clients heard about that and want to know what is this about and want to know if IBM can deliver that to them as well. I flew, Nicholas, to Nairobi, Kenya for a 2-hour meeting because the customer want to understand how we, IBM, this big elephant, can help him find the most innovative entrepreneurial product that are being developed in the country because there is a huge economic development agenda to try to promote the entrepreneurship within that particular country. So I became the person who can speak credibly about that to major clients, including large governments.
It's amazing. Now you're an advisor to a financial VC, one of the best in the world.
Yes, they really are.
What do you bring to NEA? Clearly, I know they ask you to join, but what do you bring to them that's so special?
Their success is really, and I know every single firm say, oh, we're entrepreneur friendly. You can't find one that doesn't say that. But NEA go out of their way to really ensure the entrepreneur are successful at what they're doing. Not just that I get the right return, but they want the entrepreneur to succeed. And that legacy actually came from the founders of the firm that really has this tagline, we want to build a 100-year-old venture capital firm. Yeah. Back in those days, are you kidding? Why would you care? Cash out and leave. So that cultural component of NEA really rely on how can we help the portfolio company. And they look at me and they will look at you the same way, is how can you leverage all the resources available to you
for the entrepreneurs?
For the entrepreneur, including this incredible strategic partnerships that you can have with the corporate venture. Not to mention, we're now 50% of all the funding and 30+% of all the deal has a corporate investor in it. So clearly we have grown, but NEA really wants to know from me, and the CEO bring me in when they're talking to a corporate investor, they're talking to a corporate partner, they're in some kind of a strategic partnership discussion. Remember, I've been on the other side of that fence for all my career when they're going through an M&A deal. So I know the playbook on the other side, so I advise the CEO. But I don't really come in, like I told you earlier, I don't really feel I'm the person who can help build a company. I'm not going to be the one out there hunting a CFO for a portfolio. But NEA is so good at it. They have the incredible network of CFOs that they can plug in and out. Yep. They have incredible talent partners that know how to find these incredible board members. So I think it's a very complementary in many ways for corporate venture to have that partnership with a financial venture, because the company building is, you might have, but a lot of corporation itself does not have that skill. Yeah. Entrepreneurs do, right? People that come from the entrepreneurial community does. They may not have been successful, but boy, you can learn a lot better when you're in the failure situation. So I think that symbiotic relationship between the financial venture and the corporate venture will only grow stronger.
First, I love it, and I fully agree. If the angle is to serve the entrepreneurs, make them more successful, which is not the same as pleasing them. It could be tough love. Yes. It could be about how do we help you succeed? Yes. And you're going from the right place. There's so many synergies. Can you talk about how sometimes you have to coach CVC to have the right mindset? And why are some CVCs thinking about them first? It's maybe human behavior or maybe something else.
Oh my God. I hear all the complaint because I'm such an old timer in the industry. I even warn my students that are primarily entrepreneur to watch out with which CVC they're talking about at the Stanford Business School. This thing, we're talking about the sniffing test, right? Yes. So I always tell people, I said there's two kinds of the tourism in Silicon Valley. There is the safari version, where these people just come in and they want to see all these startups. They're looking at them, reading at them. That's fine.
And then they go.
Right? They don't do anything. But the worst kind is what I call the petting zoo tourism. Oh. Because they're coming in and they're stroking you, they're touching you, they're hugging you, they're giving you all kind of falsehood about this is just about entertainment of their own interest. So they're consuming all your resources, the time, the management, attention.
False hopes.
Yes. And that actually is a lot more dangerous. I warn the entrepreneur a lot more about the petting zoo version of tourism than about the safari version. A safari, at least, they're staying at a distance.
In and out.
They're not consuming a lot from you, right? They just want to know what you're doing, how you're doing. The petting zoo version, they're spending their time stroking you, but then they leave, right? And you're left with very often false assumption of any potential opportunities that, startup love to be able to hop on the back of
And entrepreneurs are optimists. They're going to take this positive signal.
Exactly. Exactly. And so you're stroking them, you're telling them all these wonderful things, and there's nothing real behind that. That is the worst thing you and I face.
So that's a golden nugget. I never heard this analogy, but I'm loving it. Maybe it's very fitting because we're at GCV, which is such a great initiative, and we meet in Montreal, all the corporate VCs that care about building and raising the bar. But it also means, in a way, tough love, which is we need to tell corporate VCs what are the best practices, but also to watch out for the ones that don't.
Very much.
Because entrepreneurs may not differentiate between a good CVC. The bad CVC is going to give us a bad reputation. Yeah. Now, NEA is one of these amazing firms. What it is that one thing you've learned from them that you wish you would have used in your corporate VC, or if you were to start a new corporate VC, that one learning that you would for sure deploy?
One thing I learned is actually a very big lesson that I think all corporations should learn is the youth. We overvalue experience and undervalue the instinct and the fast learning of some of these the talent that we have in the pipeline.
With less filters.
Yes. In a large corporation, you have to pay your dues.
It's back to what we discussed earlier, which is corporations are driven by distribution law type of outcome, which rewards experience. But here in venture capital, it's power law, which means that actually it's not consensus you want, it's contrarian view.
Exactly. Where the financial venture like NEA, the talent that NEA had, everybody knows Scott Sandell for is the power underneath the firm, the true pipeline, the talent below that name recognition, household name. It is incredible. It makes me so guilty because I've been an executive for 30 years, and the young people coming to the group, they have to pay their due before they get my attention because we're, just like you said, we're experience driven. You have to get your seniority to get to the real senior people. You have to be like 1 level, 2 level below. Whereas NEA really bringing these talent and recognizing the talent, trying to teach, allow them to be the decision makers very quickly. That doesn't happen in corporations.
Tricky. So we have a lot of beautiful growing trees behind the forest.
Yes, I said that a lot, Nicola. It's not just with this question, but I really tried to think back in my 30-year career and trying to think about the talents that I miss, even though I have them in my organization, the type of development that was lacking inside corporation to really nurture these young talents so they can perform at that level that I see at NEA and other financial venture firm as well. Really is regretful to me because it's your loss, right? They go somewhere else.
I feel like I should ask you to repeat what you told me earlier about Catherine you met this morning for the first time and how you felt about her. So she's from TDK Venture.
Yeah.
And what you said was so interesting, and I think this is exactly what you're saying about the youth.
Yes. I have amazing credentialed people, but I don't think I gave them the chance to shine. So when I'm sitting at a table having breakfast and I'm talking to my traditional buddies, right? I'm talking to my buddies and there's young people sitting on the other side of the table. At one point in time, one of them,
Catherine,
she said, is it possible for us to have one conversation that we can introduce one another and get to meet one another? And I just looked at her and I thought, wow, that is impressive. First of all, it's uncomfortable to interrupt when people are having conversation. She obviously felt she has a very valuable thing to propose. And most of the time, though, young women, particularly of Asian, tend to be the ones that wants to follow whoever wants to lead. So I was very impressed. So I remember saying to her, I said, that's a fantastic idea. Why don't you start? And I told her I'm still the founding chairwoman, so I know everybody here, but I like to meet you just as much. Corporate venture in general, and I think that's why NEA is so successful. You allow these people that has the talent and the initiative to take charge of their own destiny rather than hand holding them. Or I was telling you, I used to have these honeymoon period with people that work for me.
Oh, you have to explain.
Rather than teaching them the rope, let them really figure out, because we live in such a different world. The model is changing, the engagement model is changing all the time. I think they bring in the most current new perspective that has a much higher chance to succeed. Can you imagine sitting around a boardroom talking about TikTok, which is actually one of the NEA company, because we're actually investor of the parent company. And then you have people like me and Forrest Basket. It's
Well,
like,
never used.
I have never done TikTok, right? So recognizing the talents that you have and the incredible power of their perspective and their decision-making process, I think is the very key to a corporate, not just corporate venture, to be honest, corporate venture to try to teach the corporation as a whole.
But you keep talking about passion being so important. You can't expect passion if you don't give ownership.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that.
But you can't get anything going if you don't have that passion. If you can't even convince me of what you're doing, you can get to the next step, whether it's my investment, my relationship, or just my interest to take another meeting.
Absolutely. Claudia, thank you so much for all your insights.
This is fun.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Nicholas.